Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. Chairman Bernanke, welcome to this committee. I am very concerned about those who create money in our society and how we hold them accountable. For those who counterfeit, if we can find them, most often they go to jail for a long time. But to those who create money in sophisticated ways through our financial system and then do great damage, sometimes they are more difficult to apprehend and prosecute. Today I would like to explore the relationship between the Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and a firm called BlackRock that went public in 1999 after its founding about a decade earlier. Let me say I'm also concerned that there may be some clever foxes in the hen house over there at the Fed as our nation proceeds to dig out of this housing collapse, which still continues in regions like my own, and hold those truly responsible accountable. Now, as I understand it, the Bank of America acquired Merrill Lynch last September, but at the time of that acquisition, because of several relationships, Bank of America actually also bought BlackRock, which now owns a near majority share of Bank of America. Recently, and that had to do with the interrelationship between BlackRock and Merrill Lynch, as you know. Recently, the Fed has just hired BlackRock to execute at least 4 contracts, and maybe 5, to analyze and handle the troubled assets of Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, making BlackRock the dominant player in pricing these distressed assets. I am concerned that BlackRock and its chief executive officer, Mr. Fink, may not be fair and impartial in conducting these responsibilities because they, in fact, have been heavily involved in inventing, creating, and trafficking in those instruments for most of the last 2 decades. Indeed, doing the risk analysis associated with them and selling billions of them to the government of the United States. So one of my questions, Mr. Bernanke, is do you know in what year Mr. Fink sold his first tranche of mortgage-backed securities to Freddie Mac? The first tranche was $1 billion. Do you know what year that occurred in?
I do not.
Do you think that's important for you to know?
No, I don't, because the arrangements we have with BlackRock and with other asset management companies are carefully set up to prevent conflicts of interest, to set up firewalls between the portion of the company that's working for us and the portion of the company that's engaging in other market activities.
Do you know what other instruments BlackRock and its subsidiaries sold to the federal government over the last 10 years?
No, I don't.
You do not. Well, I would say that I think it's pretty important for you to know some of that, because one of the difficulties with these securities is you can't unwind them. You cut them up in pieces, you sell them off, and given what we know about these pools of toxic assets, I have to say that I ask whether the Fed could actually be in collusion with Mr. Fink in covering up his own potential fraud by giving him the opportunity to shift the portfolios and have access to information that no one on this committee has access to in ways favorable to those clients he served and in ways favorable to that company today. How can we assure ourselves that it's not happening?
We can provide you with the contracts we have with BlackRock, and they involve very careful controls to make sure there's a separation between the parts of the company that are working, managing the assets of the Fed according to our instructions, and the other parts of the company that are involved in a variety of asset management activities.
Well, you know, Mr. Chairman, when you appeared before the Budget Committee, I asked you for those contracts, and I want to thank you because they were finally placed on the website of the Fed. However, the contracts that were placed there have multiple exhibits missing. For example, the investment guidelines are absent, except for one single statement of policy objective. The fee schedules and the payments are omitted, along with the designated representatives of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, as well as key personnel. Given that you are using taxpayer dollars to pay these contracts, why omit the fee schedule and payment procedures?
We have a committee that works through all of these different types of information, some of which is confidential or proprietary, and releases all that it believes is appropriate, but I will go back and talk to them and make sure they're looking at all those issues.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you, you know, the housing crisis is at the heart of this economic crisis. And if we're going to fix what's gone wrong in this society, it seems to me that those who hold extraordinary power to create money, and certainly the New York Federal Reserve has more power in that than any regional reserve bank does, or people who live on the street that I live on where homes are being foreclosed as we sit here. Something went seriously wrong, and I hear what you said this morning, but I am deeply concerned that the Fed itself is involved in the manipulation of the markets, of the mortgage markets, particularly the toxic assets that the public of the United States now owns. And I am not convinced what you've said to me about the contracts that the Fed has signed with BlackRock will be properly administered in a way that would be fair and impartial to all holders. And I hope that you can provide information to the record to convince me that my suspicions are unwarranted.
Jill will